Today's Focus Report puts one of the world's most common anti-malaria drugs under the microscope. Lariam has been prescribed to travellers for years and many have taken it without any problem. But the side effects have shown themselves to be devastating in some cases. Some users have reported hallucinations and depressions even years after taking the medication. Victims' associations are now campaigning hard to make the dangers linked to Lariam more widely known. Clément Bonneau and Zora Ben Miloud report.
December 1992, Grégoire was just 12 years old. His parents took him on a trip to Kenya.
So these are the pictures that were taken before Lariam.
His doctor prescribed him the anti-malarial drug Lariam. He started taking it a week before the trip and experienced disturbing side effects almost immediately.
I fainted a couple of times, I was feeling dizzy, my heart was beating very fast.
These side effects lasted throughout the trip and continued back home. As the months went by, they got worse. Grégoire remembers fainting and experiencing panic attacks. These symptoms started having a negative impact on his education.
You can see it here. Grégoire has trouble concentrating. He can't attend PE lessons. Once I even fell, not during sport but after. I was feeling dizzy, I couldn't get back up.
Over the years, Grégoire has researched hundreds of documents and started making the connection between his symptoms, which he still experiences today, and Lariam. He went to see a psychiatrist dozens of times and consulted many specialists. Every time he was told he has a psychological disorder, but for him there's no doubt as to what triggered his symptoms.
Doing all this research, you just end up saying to yourself, that's it. There's no other explanation. It's proven.
Grégoire now wants Lariam to be recognised as the cause of his symptoms. Today he's visiting his former doctor. He hopes to find some of his old prescriptions, which he badly needs to back up his claims. His doctor, however, says he no longer remembers prescribing the drug. Thanks to a hidden camera, we follow Grégoire into the doctor's office.
You say you had side effects. I can't really dispute that. I can't say yes or no. But anyway, the key point here is to prove that you did take Lariam. And without a prescription, how do you expect to prove that you took it?
Despite Grégoire's questions, the doctor stands his ground.
I have absolutely no right to sign a piece of paper saying that you did take something. I just can't do it. Legally, the pharmaceutical company will say I'm lying.
Grégoire's experience is far from unique. Dozens of people in France have turned to AVAM, an association that helps patients who suffer from the long-term side effects of prescription drugs. Its president has been collecting testimonies from across the country and says he hopes to launch a class-action lawsuit against Roche, which manufactures Lariam, next year.
The biggest difficulty is to find, after many years, traces of a prescription. And then there is also a time limit, which means that after a certain period of time, you can no longer start legal proceedings.
All over the world, people who claim to be victims of Lariam have a hard time making their voices heard. In the United States and the United Kingdom, the drug has long been prescribed to soldiers sent to areas where malaria is prevalent. It's been linked to dozens of cases of depression, suicide and violent behaviour. In Europe, Belgian singer Stromae had to cancel his Africa tour after taking the drug. 2 years on, he says he's no longer the same person.
I have few regrets in my life, but if I could go back in time and avoid taking Lariam, I would do it without the slightest hesitation.
In France and in Europe, authorities say they take reports of adverse reactions very seriously. Regulation was strengthened in 2013. It's now established that Lariam may cause prolonged neuropsychiatric reactions, which may persist for a long time after patients stop taking the drug. Swiss pharmaceutical firm Roche, meanwhile, says it's taken all the necessary steps to minimize risks in recent years. The company estimates that between 1 in 10 and 1 in 100 patients may experience psychiatric disorders after taking Lariam, but claims that these effects are usually short-lived and therefore do not call into question the usefulness of the drug.
Lariam is still on the list of medications deemed essential by the World Health Organization, which is reviewed regularly. Successive re-evaluations in 2013 and 2016 have shown that Lariam still has a place in the therapeutic arsenal, used to treat or prevent chemo-resistant malaria.
Lariam has been one of the most prescribed anti-malarial drugs for the past 30 years. Today, however, health professionals say there are now alternatives to the drug, such as Malarone and doxycycline, whose side effects are less debilitating.
It is quite obvious that Lariam is not the first medication we prescribe to travellers. Usually we prescribe it as a drug of last resort. Actually, we always prescribe it as a drug of last resort. There are travellers who can't take other drugs, and yet we have to protect them against malaria.
Reactions to Lariam are better known today, and regulators have taken steps to prevent risks. People who suffer from side effects, however, have not given up the fight. We meet Grégoire again. Today he attends a neurofeedback session, a therapy he's testing to cure his anxiety. Over the years he's tried everything, hypnosis, meditation, yet his symptoms won't go away.
Well, for more on this story, I'm joined now on set by Yazdan Pana, the head of the Infectious Disease Department at Paris's Bichat Claude Bernard Hospital. Thank you very much for coming in to talk to us here on France 24. First of all, as we saw in that report, this is a drug that's been prescribed in France and internationally for decades now. Just how bad can the side effects be, and are doctors doing enough to warn their patients of these side effects?
Yeah, good afternoon. First of all, as you saw in the film that we just saw, there are psychiatric adverse events that are related to Lariam. Anxiety, nightmare, depression, seizures. These are not quite rare, but really serious adverse events are very rare. 1 over 10,000, which is not frequent. And one of the reasons we are seeing them now more than a few years ago, because we have had many people on this, and when you have many people on this and you have a large denominator, then you can see more cases of this. How we can, the second part of your question, how can warn patients, inform patients? Because first of all, probably we should use this drug as the last drug for malaria prophylaxis. We have other choices. We have Malarone, we have cyclins, doxycycline for malaria. When we cannot use these drugs, we should probably use Lariam. But when we use Lariam, we probably should inform patients about what are the side effects.
Now, I don't necessarily want to sing its praises, but Lariam has been used, as I was saying, for many years, and with a pretty much, apart from the side effects that we've learned recently, it's had a pretty good success rate.
Yeah, it is a very efficacious drug. There is no question about the efficacy, and having a malaria is always worse than having these side effects. So it has been a useful drug. But unfortunately, you have these side effects. You have these adverse events. They are rare. When you can not use it, you should not use it. But sometimes you don't have any choice.
Now, you mentioned there some of the alternatives that are available on the market. Given that what we know about these side effects linked to Lariam, should Lariam now be banned completely, and should these alternatives be given greater precedence and bigger weight?
I don't think that it should be banned. I think it should be used less possible. We don't have that much choices. As I said, we have Malarone and we have doxycycline. So 2 choices. But some patient could be allergic, could not support these 2 drugs. Then when you cannot use these drugs, it's better Lariam than nothing.
And what would you say to those people watching at home that need to take an anti-malaria drug and that are now, after watching this film or after reading articles on the website about Lariam and the dangers, what would you say to them about their options and what they should be doing?
I think the information is that it's certainly better to use other alternatives than Lariam. when you cannot use the alternatives, and you should use Lariam, I think the message is first to start 10 days before going or traveling. Second, if you have even minor adverse event, psychiatric, you should stop. And third, if you have the history of psychiatric events, you should not take it.
Okay, Yazdan Panard, the head of the infectious disease department at Paris's Bichat Claude Bernard Hospital. Thank you very much for joining us.